now with the ages, but of course his legacy lives on. We shall be delving a little bit deeper into what his works meant for the youth movement. But take us through first and foremost, what is the National Youth Council up to right now? What are you driving? What should we expect? Are we doing a good job?
Thank you. Greetings to all our viewers and listeners. As you've rightly said, my name is Jacob Oulanyah. I am serving as a chairperson of the National Youth Council for the term 2020 to 2025. I would say the National Youth Council, just for knowledge purposes, is a body that brings together all the young people of Uganda. Why I use the term young people and not youth is because there are varying definitions that we work with.
Interesting.
Our constitution provides for 18 to 30.
18 to 30.
It is the supreme law of the land.
So under the constitution,
yes,
I am not a youth.
You're not a youth. But you could be a youth under the African Union, where we belong, and we agree.
The guys behind the scenes, I am a Mzee, so please ensure that you give me that respect.
At the African Union, it's 18 to 35.
18 to 35.
So maybe you are a youth by the African Union.
I still am out of the bracket. Damn.
I'll probably find you at the UN, because the UN considers the youth to be 15 to 24.
15 to.
So are you the UN?
15 to 24? No,
Yes.
no.
Okay.
I'm way above that.
Unfortunately for you, may need to try Sudan, because Sudan for them it's around 40. But that really is a definition of the.
In normal speak, tokubienyo. All right, okay, let's go.
But the National Youth Council brings together all those people.
Yeah.
And we work with sister organizations like the Uganda National Students Association to ensure that we meet the necessities of young people in this country in terms of participation, in terms of representation, but also in terms of advocacy around issues that affect young people generally. What we are doing right now is to increase a three-ended approach, which we are calling our big agenda, which is better livelihoods, inclusion of young people, and collective group action by young people. Our approach to a big agenda is based on the realities of our young people. The biggest challenge we have as young people now is the question of employment. And that speaks directly to their livelihoods. And that's why we have a better livelihoods as a first principle. And then when we look at the inclusion of young people, that's to do with all spheres of our governance, whether it is in our representative voices in parliament, how many young people's voices are heard, whether it comes to the question of how government implements, how many young people participate in implementation of government initiatives, but also how many of them benefit from government initiatives. Then finally, group action. There are things that as young people we need to take a stand on as a generation.
Yeah, sure.
Nelson Mandela once said that sometimes it falls on a generation to be great. And in those instances, the generation comes together. And there have been times, and I'll speak about Jacob Oulanyah later,
no doubt.
but there have been times in history where a generation has come out great. In our country, there have been times in 1962, there have been times in 1980, and there have recently now been times when we were born and we needed to find our own path as young people. So I feel that the National Youth Council drives, for me, in my leadership, we must drive certain aspects that we act on as a group that we need to raise our greatness upon, like our education. How does the education of the young people of Uganda enable them to become something in our country? So that's really what we are up to.
All right, you speak like a great man. Now, some people achieve greatness, others have it thrust upon you. In this particular scenario, there's a lot that has been thrust upon you in terms of responsibility to shape the youth agenda. The youth are in a bit of a dilemma today. The pursuit of employment, the achievement of political paths, for example, you want to go into the different leadership positions, and then the sheer fact that the politics of the day is peppered by finances, money, and the youth have been seen to be increasingly becoming victims of tokenism. The National Youth Council is in a position where it can pursue a correct path or fall into the trenches.
Yeah.
I do not know whether you are choosing not to go downwards.
Well, I'll just say, when it comes to political participation, everyone who wants power must go into the trench. You must meet the people where they are. You're not going to meet the people at higher ground. It is leadership that can raise the people to higher ground. Right. When you're in office, you can bring them to a particular semblance or a particular mentality of nationality. But at the grassroots, looking for the vote, you must meet the people where they are. While I was campaigning, I could not speak English. I speak some Acholi, so I spoke to the Acholis in Acholi. Okay. I speak some Alur. I spoke to the Alurus in Alur. Did
you go to Butaleja?
I don't speak Rugwere.
Lunyoli, not Rugwere, let's be clear.
Okay, I don't speak Lunyoli. But I had a friend to interpret to that end. Okay. I speak some Luganda. Of course, I come from Teso. I speak some small greetings in Runyankore. So when you go down, you need to meet the people at their level. And that is really the thrust of it. That's but right. if you come to the political table at the national level, it needs to change. You need to be able to supersede the level of the common people to begin to pursue the vision of the people.
Are you comfortable with what appears to be inability of the older generation to give way for the young people and the young persons to take on the mantle of leadership within public service, but also within the political circles?
Well, for public service, it's a given. There is a retirement age, so there is nothing to say about that.
There have been attempts to change people's age.
Yes, there have been attempts, and the country has made progress in terms of trying to avert that practice. And that's why the National Identification and Registration Authority exists. The hardest thing, I was privileged to have worked with them, the hardest thing to do there is to change your age by 1 year. And if you want to go into more than 1 year, you are in a comedy of sorts.
Yeah,
you know,
it's absurd. It's absurd.
Yes, but in terms of the politics, and I want young people to understand this.
Talk to them.
There is no, so to speak, there is no necessity for the old people to give you way. There is no necessity, because in the politics, everyone has a say. Now, it is for the young people to take up spaces. It is not going to be handed to us, and that needs to be very clear.
We are in a cultural setting that does not allow, most of the time, for young persons to be as aggressive as they ought to be. So much so that it is seen as an upfront on some of the responsibilities of the older persons when a young man comes up and, for example, says, "Hey, Muzei, give way. It is our time. You told us yesterday that we are the leaders of the future, of tomorrow."
It is, again, under Muzei that you're using Muzei.
Muzei in terms as older person.
So it's in the presence of this Vazei, that the age for running for office has been reduced to 18, ideally including more young people. So it really isn't about whether the old want to give or not give. In politics, there is nothing like giving. It's not there. There is conceding.
Wow.
Okay? And in conceding, you are able to say, at this point, I don't think I can hold it together. I will allow this go. I will not allow. You're
effectively looking at politics and telling the youth, this is a dog fight. Go in there. Fight your case. Make your way.
Very true. And if we look at politics as an offer, platforms of political participation as offers to young people, then we are making a big error. If I'll give you another example. If at the time when India was getting its independence with the leadership of Gandhi, if they looked at the proposition by the British as an offer, it was never an offer. All these were demands in an African setting where there were not enough educated people to handle the countries. So there needed to be concessions at that time where the protracted struggles of the African people.
A section of society will say your argument validates some of the currents that are blowing within the political circles, where the youth are being told to completely stand up and take on the mantle of leadership. We shall, of course, have an opportunity another day to delve into exactly what is happening within the youth movement and how best the National Youth Council is inching forward. Let's speak Jacob Oulanyah. The country right now is under the canopy, a somber mood following the passing of a man who showed from a very early age that he was going to be the kind of leader that he turned out to be. We can, of course, pray and hope that most of the youth right now can emulate him and be able to stand up as, people of a substance in the political space. What do you make of Jacob Oulanyah? How do you know him away from the fact that he was the speaker and the politician that he became? Do we have a personal relationship that you can talk about that can take us into the life of Jacob Oulanyah that perhaps a man like Chris Higenyi never knew?
Well, my personal experience with Jacob Oulanyah has been as personal as they get. Sure. While in my senior six, I debated for my high school, and I happened to be selected among the students that would represent the students against members of parliament. Wow. In 2011, that year, Jacob Oulanyah was already the deputy speaker of parliament. With his sense of humility, he came into the debate to debate against students. Wow. That is unheard of in parliament, that the deputy speaker would be engaged in a debate, but he came down to our level and debated. By the coincidence of fate, I was directly against him. Wow. And at the time, the debate, I remember the topic was that whether, the question was whether political party caucuses curtail freedom of speech in the August House. So we had to debate. He had to defend that they don't. We had to debate that they do. Our side seemed the easier.
That should have been one hell of a
it was one hell of a debate. But fast forward 2019, about 8 years later, I now, as the leader of the Debate Society of Uganda, took students to parliament, and this time he was addressing them in opening speech. And what really amazed me was that he recalled that debate and joked about it. And he said, that time when I was debating you, Jacob, I had to reduce my level so low so you could match me. Such was the humility of such a man, and that's where our personal relationship started. When I was elected chairperson of the National Youth Council, we found it very easy to enter his office as Speaker of Parliament. From the onset, the first things he said spoke to our generation. Number one is about the degrading quality of Parliament. The whole country agrees that the debate in parliament does not reflect the institution that was there many years ago. And if you're talking about many years ago, most of the names that come are actually the generation that is Jacob Oulanyah. So when you're talking about the late Wapaka Bulo, when you're talking about Ben Wacha, that generation is lost in today's house. And to find that generation, we needed a leadership that was able to call the national sense of belonging to that generation again. And he had started it. From the first day, he made it clear that this house will not be a house where we make more noise than we make arguments. He said, you need to speak when you're researched. And when he said these things, as young people, we began to understand that our political participation should transcend our noise, transcend our capacity to be the loudest. And for me, that really spoke to me. But as the National Youth Council, he had given us guarantees. For many years, we have been looking for a budget increment to be able to do certain things, reach many more young people. And he asked me in that meeting, Jacob, would you be felt by the grassroots youth chairperson in a deep village somewhere? I remember him using the district of Kotido. And I told him, in the moment I may not, but I hope that in 5 years, at the end of my term, I will, because of such questions. So for me, it's a very personal relationship. I enjoyed the mentorship that he gave. I had the rare opportunity as a young person to meet him as a student at high school, to meet him as a student at the university, and to meet him as a leader of the youth of Uganda. And I feel that now I have the responsibility to continue his example and his legacy.
What exactly can the National Youth Council put a finger to when it comes to the achievements of Jacob Oulanyah in pushing the national youth agenda?
Three things. One, the national youth agenda starts with livelihoods. Young people have been increasing in much more numbers than our job creation capacity has been in the country. The late speaker was a key architect in the creation of the Youth Livelihood Program. At the time, he was the Deputy Speaker of Parliament, and he gave great advisory to the creation of that program. And as we established that program, he also gave great guidance to how it can be furthered in a sense that brings all young people onto a common agenda, but also onto the agenda that is the most important agenda, wealth creation, so that they move away from looking for jobs and becoming creators of their own jobs. So that's, for me, a very important step that he did. But secondly, and for me most importantly, is that he gave young people unusual access to the precincts of Parliament. I remember him telling us when we met him with the youth members of Parliament just after his election that you don't need an appointment to be here. You are national youth leaders, and if there's a matter of concern for young people, this country is young. He said, so that should be a priority in this office. So that spoke louder than many political speeches have been in this country. That said, that young people are the priority in this country and should be the priority for this house. In that sense, that's something we've been struggling with as a National Youth Council, where we go to offices and the first perspective that is given to you that these young people, what can you do? Most of your people, why don't you talk to your fellow young people? Why are they shouting? You know,
talking about that
victimizing young people.
That characterization, before you come on to the third aspect of what exactly his signature on the agenda for youth is, the tendency for young persons to want and be comfortable to project the picture of inefficiency, the picture of laissez-faire approach to doing things, and never really giving attention to the detail of a thing or two. And it shows right from social media that has completely flipped the mindset of the youth. I do not know whether there is any strategic moves by the National Youth Council to change this mindset, so that at one point or two, the youth can be looked at not for much of what they say, but the character of, you know, being able to push and speak up, you know, in a way that gives confidence to whoever is giving them the ear.
Thank you. And I am not going to be dishonest here. In every generation, there are people that represent that. Unfortunately, that it's the young that are easily picked on. But in every generation, even among the old, there are those who wake up to go to the bar and come home.
The young are loudest.
Yes. Among the people of our mothers' ages, there are those who are prostitutes. And so it's not a question of young people, how we actually look out. It's just that
maybe we hit the percentages more.
Yes. It's easy to pick on the young people because they do it with more vigor and presence. The young person will come and dance in the middle of the road because he's drunk. The old person has danced enough years on the road. He now wants to dance perhaps in the home and the compound. But that's not to say we don't see the problem. We see our problem as a generation. And this is what pushed some of us into leadership. Away from, because I went to Makerere University on a national merit scholarship for engineering. So it would appear that I should have no business struggling with uneducated young people because I already have a chance at a good livelihood. However, that is not the country I want. The country that I want is a country where all people have access to education, all people have access to good health, and to contribute to that country, I thought I would make a better contribution as a leader who understands that necessity and not as an engineer working on one machine in an industry somewhere. So I think that we understand that problem. What we are doing about it, I need to say, is not a quick fix. We cannot say that the National Youth Council will quickly solve the problem of the youth. Yeah. No, and it is largely a problem that might be dealt with better by the institutions of government entirely than by one single institution. Because the process of a mindset transformation of a nation starts from the very head of that nation. And the president has made an attempt to speak to that necessity. What do young people do? How do we get them into productive sectors? So young people can begin to think of their daily lives as a contribution to themselves each day, much more than just some days are okay lousing around. Yeah, but the National Youth Council goes to the grassroots. We use our structures, we orient our structures to understand what should the direction of our population be as 9.5 million youth that were present.
Yeah, you spoke very intimately about Jacob Oulanyah's ability to bring youth on board and to give them an open door to be able to consult him and perhaps the leaders around him on anything that could be going on. Right now, in terms of pushing the national youth agenda, I do not know whether you're getting enough support, collaboration from the powers that be when it comes to shaping national discourse and the nature of policies that are rolling out. How often do you engage the policymakers on your opinion on the issues of the day? Do we have a set platform, or it's a case of saying what's going on through the media and then you call a press conference, express your opinion that way? Do we have a more direct approach to that?
Well, we have a multifaceted approach. We use many ways to get our things done. The National Youth Council has an annual sitting, what we call the National Delegates Conference of the Youth, which has all district representative youth leaders coming together, and we have resolutions and discussions about youth issues. That's a platform. And that's the most powerful institution for me. I chair those sittings, and the resolutions of those sittings are for us the law for the year, you know, and that's what we run with, the priority areas that young people want worked on. And when we get those, we run with them to the people that hold the power in this country. It is not possible for us to always get our way.
Yeah, sure.
But we must be seen to have our say in whatever it is that we're trying to, you know, influence. And so we go directly to the heads. When we have an issue that is handled by the office of a prime minister, we don't go to the director. We start from the top so that we work downwards. We have found it faster to arrive at our needs as young people while talking to principals. Yeah, because while you may go through the process and reach up, the implementation delays if it's not directed from the principals.
I think that speaks to the technocrats who are responsible for escalating some of these concerns as registered by the youth, not only the youth, but also other stakeholders within the country. The ability to work on something, not because it is within your interest or within your setting as a politician and whichever inclination that you have. The politics of the day, National Resistance Movement, Democratic Party, Uganda People's Congress, and quite a newcomer on the political scene, the National Unity Platform. That has flipped the whole youth agenda to a tendency to ask youth to stand up for themselves, like we had alluded to earlier in the program. I do not know whether it is a deliberate move. Shouldn't the youth step up a little bit more without fear of being judged, without fear of offending the older persons? I keep returning to this because I know we're going to have to move that to move away from that step.
So let me just say, first of all, the National Unity Platform has not been the flip factor.
Sure.
No. They have not been the flip factor.
Take me through.
They have taken advantage of the presence of a heavy population that is disgruntled. And because that population is majorly young, but also only in urban areas. That's where we have gotten this very large
that is debatable.
issue. No, it's not. But we can have time for
we
that.
Can of course
if
have
you
time
allow
for
it on air, we can have time.
No. We don't have much time.
For example, in our elections, the first level of election is the village.
Yeah, sure.
And the village is a village, so to speak, village suffrage. And people line up behind their candidates. and in that village election, the NRM won all over the country. So you cannot say that, therefore, the flip factor of the National Unity Platform. I really thank the National Unity Platform for the increment in consciousness to certain groups. Okay? There are groups that were not, and to quote their president, he says, because Parliament doesn't go to the ghetto came to Parliament. You know, I think, for me, that's a good thing for our politics, that it also got the attention of the president to say, look, the reason why those people are behaving like that is because you people have not been going to them. And now, as you notice, there is a change of structure in governance. The prime minister now goes to the people, dances with them, but also listens to the common person. Wow. This is exactly what Jacob Oulanyah was also saying. Does the person at the grassroots feel you? You know, and that is where our politics
and he was pretty good on engaging with the people.
Yes, and that should not be a party issue. It should be the very substance that elevates our party multi-party structure. But that aside, there is still a problem in our political participation of young people. It doesn't matter whether you're in the NUP political party or the FDC or the NRM where I belong, the presence and voices of youth in those structures is not strong. In that sense, what am I talking about? The presence and voices of youth in political parties is presented by the youth leagues of political parties. And if I asked you whether you know the chairperson of a youth league of any of them, you would be very surprised. Do you know the chairperson of the youth league of NUP?
I do know many of the leaders who are are acting, but
and yet he is very known to
but
you.
What we need to do, don't flip this on me. I'm asking the question.
What I am saying, what I'm saying is that there is a problem across the board on how young people engage.
As Youth Council, you've just stated that you are a member of the National Resistance Movement.
Yes.
Take us through what initiatives are being done to cover all political parties in terms of youth participation and opportunities to drive their agenda. Are you doing something based on objective assessment, or we could be falling into the traps of playing to the governing party politics?
So coincidentally, this interview is happening at a time when I've already called for a meeting between chairpersons of youth leagues of political parties,
all the parties,
okay, and the National Youth Council. The National Youth Council is the uniting body. It's a multi-party body. I had to win election against an FDC candidate, my brother from Rukunjiri, but I have to work with him. Okay, so the only pure institution in youth leadership in the country is the National Youth Council, pure in the sense that we represent everyone. And in that sense, we can convene everyone. And I have used that advantage to say, can we talk about how we engage at our political party levels? When it's time for election, we shall contest, and someone will be at a position. But immediately we end the elections, the young people of this country must get on the agenda of their participation as a generation and as a group. And that is what we are working on. And what we want to start each year, starting with this year, is to say, can we have a national conference of political youth leaders, which is a multi-party conference. An iPod of sorts for youth, but because the National Youth Council is convening, it can't be inter-party.
iPod is already, and
it has to be
a spell that completely speaks of something that perhaps will not be able to help you achieve that. I do not know whether the young persons will be more accommodative than their older counterparts within most of these
I think we are very accommodative. we have not yet had enough enough
you
money,
okay,
so to speak.
Enough money?
Yes, enough money to split us, because some of the things we've had in the past are that some people realize that there is no opportunity here to be the principal or to control so they go this way. Yeah, so young people have the chance
talking
to
about money and the allure of coin.
Yes.
Some people believed at the time the deceased speaker changed from the Uganda People's Congress to the National Resistance Movement was to get a better opportunity, not only to be the politician that he wanted to be, but there is a tendency to be better off when you apparently join the National Resistance Movement. That could be a little bit of a black spot on his legacy, something that I do not think the youth want to look at in terms of if I'm within an opposition party, I can look to being seen in good light by the National Resistance Movement, that is the governing party. This could happen perhaps in the future when another party also takes on. I don't know whether it's the nature of the politics in the country. How are we, and I keep saying we because I'm still young, though not necessarily youth. How do we change this? It's down to mindset, but there must be a very direct way of dealing with it. We shouldn't look at money to be an overriding factor.
First of all, my brother Higen, you cannot say that the speaker's move to the NRM is a bit of a black spot. It's the best thing that happened.
Some commentators can.
You would probably not know him as speaker had he not joined the NRM. The NRM enjoys a comfortable majority in the country.
Very.
And at all levels of governance. So if you want to have influence in this country, or to have impact, whatever kind of brain you have, you need to work with those that control the country. Yes.
You can work with outside the confines of the governing party and still have as much impact as you would have perhaps if you were within.
Good.
Isn't it down to character?
No, so let me give an instance. If you want to construct a road, you need to work with the National Roads Authority to be able to have your way on that road.
That is how...
It doesn't mean that you agree with their leadership. It's just that they control what happens on the road. That's what I'm saying. That the way the government system is set up is that there is an institution called government that runs the affairs of the country. If you want to be someone that impacts your community, you need to find a way of working with them.
So in other words,
if you're lucky, like in our case in Uganda, you will find that it's a democracy. So you can participate while actually antagonistically participating, saying, I don't like you, but you're allowed to speak.
Allow me put you in a tight spot right now.
Let's hope it's tight enough.
The president has often alluded to the fact that if you elect a member of the opposition for a particular constituency in the by-elections or even in the mainstream general elections, you're doing a disservice to yourself because he will not be able to talk to him or that person won't have access to him. Should we be at this level?
Perhaps we need to understand political rhetoric. I'll give you an example. Many people quote the United States as a model democracy. But when the United States was debating the attack on Capitol Hill, the whole Republican Party said it was generally plausible, but also genuine political discourse.
You know, a bit of expression of concerns and sentiment within the society.
If you ask the Democrats, that is almost terrorism. How does that happen? And so in terms of political rhetoric, there is no problem absolutely to say that if you're on the other side, it's harder for me to listen to you. And that's genuine because there are enough people on this side that I have to first finish listening to in terms of my party structure and caucus before I come to you.
Interesting.
But in the reality of our politics as a country, it is also becoming a norm that it appears whatever comes out on the other side must be refused and whatever comes out on this side must be refused. And I'm not saying that for only opposition, also for NRM. And that's something that has been also a conversation that we've had as a country to say, can we find a modality that finds good and pick it up? And I think the NRM has exemplified that the most by picking up members of the opposition and prominent members and allowing them to come into the NRM and take up positions of leadership and power.
Let me take up your argument on political rhetoric. Yesterday, the president spoke about the specter of tribalism and the tendency for people to want some of these positions ring-fenced.
Yes.
Now, in the greater sense, in the greater picture, the president was expressing dismay at the fact that tribalism seems to be taking root.
Yeah.
Was this rhetoric, as you have just alluded to?
No. I think, and I agree with the president, we need to understand where we want to take our country. Our small groupings, enclaves, if you like, of tribal association do not take this country anywhere. They do not benefit this country at all. I agree that there is an intrinsic view of our country tribally by saying the Acholi land, Teso land, Sebe land, Buganda. It speaks to tribal identities, okay? And perhaps in the future we can review how we demarcate lands. We could probably change naming for that purpose.
Rectify a colonial anomaly. So
it predates colonialism. The colonialists found the Acholi calling themselves the Acholi, you know, and agreeing that this is our land. The story of how Uganda and Ankole agreed on a boundary, which then included Liantonde on the side of Uganda, was that the kings agreed to meet wherever they meet would be the boundary, and then the Kabaka of Uganda slept in Masaka. so all of a sudden they were Ankole fading Uganda.
That's a nice drop back in history.
But now to say very clearly, we are not going to push this country forward based on what your surname is. We are going to push this country forward based on what ideas you have, regardless of your surname, of your color, and whichever it is that identity speaks to. I'll give you an example. The NRM race for vice chairperson Eastern Region included Mr. Sanjay Tana, Honorable Sanjay Tana, and Captain Mike Mukula.
Sanjay Tana, that is a Tororo?
Yes, from Tororo. Yeah. If you look at Sanjay Tana, he looks more Indian than Ugandan in skin texture. But he is much more Ugandan than many Ugandans want to even be. If we are to go by how he looks and say this one therefore is not Ugandan, we will not deal with him, in that sense we have gone for how he looks as opposed to his actual contribution and nature to Uganda. And in that sense we need to look at tribalism as a problem of our development. Not just a problem of our identity questions. It's a problem of our development. We need to move beyond that. And it reduces great men. I was one of those that was very hurt when I heard that there are people that want positions ring-fenced for them because
sons, relatives,
because Jacob Oulanyah came from their land. That is not a principle of the NRM. To be vice chairperson Northern Uganda of the NRM, you need to be elected by the whole country. And in the past, members of parliament would be elected across the country. You're going to represent the people of Teso, but you will be voted by also the Banyankole. That system that identifies us first as national players is the one we need. But also, you are not going to run an economy of only Acholi, only Teso, only Karamoja. You have to run an economy that shows that our country needs to move forward. When we are talking about integration, we are talking about African unity. We cannot in the same breath be accessible to conversations around whether I'm an Acholi or a Muganda. What are we going to do about our cosmopolitan towns like Kampala here, where the
collection of all the
almost all the Acholis don't speak Acholi the way the other ones speak. If you ask me to speak Luganda, you'd be surprised whether I'm from Teso. You know, what are you going to do about that? What are you going to do about schools? What are you going to... So that conversation must die. And this generation should be willing to kill it henceforth.
They should be able to get the gun. A full magazine should be let out on tribalism and any undertones that speak to such social folly. As chairman or chairperson of the National Youth Council, it's very possible that 10 years from now, we could look back at this interview and say we were interviewing the president. Today, the economy is bleeding. High fuel prices.
Yes.
Commodities are basically inaccessible. Education itself is a bit of something of youth can't really access. What should we do? What is the solution? I know leaders grow from a very early age to be able to tackle some of these particular issues. You see how things are being handled. I'm not saying this, or for example, dismiss what the Minister for Finance, the Permanent Secretary, is doing. I consistently want to engage on the fact that he's more the PS Minister of Finance, a man who espoused economics that works during his time at MOOBS. He now finds himself in the thick of it. What is your take on the economy and what is happening?
First of all, I have great faith in the PSST, that is Ramadan Govi, Mr. Ramadan Govi. I have great faith in him. I've worked with him, and he's a good friend.
Not that we are putting him on the spot as an individual.
I'm going to put him on the spot.
Ah, sure,
yeah,
please.
Because dissent is allowed.
Okay.
I have great faith in him. However, there are things that I think we can do as a country that is, in a sense, going to the length to protect your people.
That's right.
For example, I don't understand why young people who access government startup money are taxed for starting up businesses. That is partly the reason why, because these young people don't have capacity, they don't have knowledge. For most of them, we take them through training first then we throw them in the thick of it. Okay. It's like saying we are requesting someone to take over our treasury as a PSST before he has attained his first economics degree. He has just gotten out of commerce class and he should now be,
he's still learning the ropes.
Yes, in that sense, I think we can do better. But in terms of the economy, as a National Youth Council, we are taking a stand, and you'll see that statement soon on social media. We're taking a stand to say there are things that we must show our national character in. If yes, the price of soap is going up, the price of the mathematical set should not go up along with it, because that will affect and impede the education of our young people. The price of a basic book that a child goes with, scholastic materials generally should be protected. So we can show national character in a face of global crisis. It is just like we did with the COVID pandemic, that we said, okay, let's distribute food at a time when we're closing down the country. That sense of national character is very important. I understand the economics around it, but I think that our country can go to a length to show that our citizens matter to us. Secondly, we can agree to take certain shocks at particular times. Those shocks would be for the benefit of recovery in the future. We have done that. For example, again, because Jacob Oulanyah is the case, we have decided to forego over 70 billion in a public holiday and in expenditure for his burial, because of what we think he represents and how important he is to the country. In that sense, we must go to that length when it comes to the economy. I agree that there is economics that works, but I think that that economy should work for the people.
Jacob Oulanyah, chairperson of the National Youth Council, many thanks for the insightful perspectives that you've just shared on the legacy of Jacob Oulanyah, but also on the issues that are of concern to Ugandans and currently part of the discourse within the country. Time now for a short break. Morning at NTV continues. We do have a tech note, and my partner in crime, Priscilla Regina Naloga, shall be back with that. Stay with us.